The family life cycle. Just as an individual can be described in terms of his or her stage in the human life cycle, it is possible to describe stages that occur throughout the life of a family unit. The idea of a family life cycle can add things to our understanding of individual development. For example, families must reorganize to accommodate growth of their members, and developments in any of the family's generations may have an impact on one or all the family members, i.e. a child starting school. If we consider the child starting school, the child going to school needs to adapt to a new social environment. They need to adapt to, if they had a stay-at-home mom, adapt to breaking apart from their mom to go to school. You have siblings. If they are siblings at the same school, they might need to adapt to have another sibling in the school with them. And also parents need to adapt to letting go of their children so that they can go to school. Though we look at the stages of a family life cycle, it is important to recognize that there is no universal version. Families come in a variety of forms. This is something we will consider in the practical application of this section. The real value of the family life cycle concept isn't so much defining what is normal or expected at various stages, but recognizing that families often develop problems at transitions in the life cycle. Problems develop when a family encounters a challenge and are unable to accommodate all the changed circumstances. These problems or challenges can come in three forms. Firstly, horizontal stresses. This is developmental challenges involving change and growth, and unpredictable challenges such as accidents, chronic or terminal disease, untimely death, and trauma, and any natural disasters. The next category we will consider is vertical stresses. These are challenges within family patterns, values, and legacies. And lastly, emotional challenges. This involves changes, adaptations, negotiations regarding patterns of interactions, boundaries needing to be more flexible, and the development of new skills. All three of these concepts you can unpack further in your Welsh reading. There are 6 stages of the family life cycle. These are namely leaving home, the single young adults, the joining of families through marriage, the new couple, families with young children, families with adolescents, launching children and moving on, and lastly, families in later life. At each of these stages, there are emotional processes of transaction that need to happen, as well as second-order changes in the family status, which is required for the family to proceed developmentally. We will now unpack each of these stages. First of all, leaving home, the young adults. Here, the emotional process of transition is accepting emotional and financial responsibility for self, and the second-order change in family status required to proceed developmentally includes A. Differentiation of self in relation to family of origin, B. Development of intimate peer relationships, and C. Establishment of self in respect to work and financial independence. The next stage, the joining of families through marriage, the new couple. Here, the key principle in terms of emotional process of transition is commitment to a new system, and the second order change being A. Formation of the marital system, and B. Realignment of relationships with extended families and friends to include the spouse. The next stage, families with young children. Here the emotional process of transition is accepting new members into the system, and the second order changes being A. Adjusting marital system to make space for children, B. Joining in child rearing, financial and household tasks, and C. Realignment of relationships with extended family to include parenting and grandparenting roles. Families with adolescents. Here the emotional process of transition is increasing flexibility of family boundaries to permit children's independence and grandparents' frailties. Here the second order changes are A. Shifting of parent-child relationships to permit adolescents to move in and out of the system, B. Refocus on midlife marital and career issues, and C. beginning shift towards caring for the older generation. The next stage is launching children and moving on. Here, the key principles in terms of the emotional process of transaction is accepting a multitude of exits from and entries into the family system, and the second order changes in family status required to proceed developmentally is A. Renegotiation of the marital system as a dyad, B. Development of adult-to-adult relationships, C. Realignment of relationships to include in-laws and grandchildren, and D. Dealing with disabilities and death of parents, which would, in other words, be the grandparents. The last stage that we need to consider is families in later life. Here, the emotional process of transition is accepting the shifting of generational roles, and the second order changes in family status required to proceed developmentally is A. Maintaining own and or capital functioning and interest in the face of physiological decline. In other words, exploration of new familial and social role options. B. Support for more central role of the middle generation. C. Making room in the system for the wisdom and experience of the elderly, supporting the older generation without overfunctioning for them. And lastly, D. Dealing with loss of spouse, siblings and other peers and preparation for death.